Hey guys, welcome to the fourth and final episode in the airbrushing gunpla tutorial series. In this final episode, we're going to talk about airbrushing metallic paints, masking for color separation and details, and top coating. So once your base coats have been laid down and all your pieces are ready to go, I like to lay them out and give them a quick once over to make sure that things look the way that I want them to up to this point. From here, I'll start separating parts into piles. If they need to be masked for another color, they go into a pile. If they need to be masked for metallics, they go into another pile, and if they're already done, you put them in their own pile. While we're working on that, let's give a quick shout out to some patrons. This month we have Andy, Gil, SD, Rex, Nick, and Adam. If you're interested in supporting the channel, consider checking out the Patreon link in the description. You'll get videos early as well as some other rewards for joining. Let's get started with metallics. Metallic paints are exactly what they sound like. They're meant to mimic metal finishes on what you spray them on. As per our standard, we're going to start with some experiments on a couple of spoons and one actual model piece. Commonly, people will talk about spraying metallic paints over a black base, or more specifically, a gloss black surface to maximize your shine and the depth of color in your metallic paint. But we're going to look at what an undercoat can do to your metallics. So first, we're going to spray alclad duraluminum over our different bases. The first base is going to be a gray primer. This is going to produce a more dull metallic finish, but if you wanted a less reflective or I guess opaque looking metal finish, this is probably what you're going to start with. Next, we're going to use a black undercoat. There's a lot more depth in this one, and it reflects the color a lot differently than the gray did. Here's a side by side. The last example I'm going to show is how metallics can work against bare gray plastic. I'm only showing this because I will commonly paint my frames without priming them to maximize parts clearance when working with moving pieces. So now that we know how our undercoat affects our metallics, we can establish some sort of working order for how we spray our metallics. Personally, I don't mind a little shine, so I'm always going to start with a darker base. You can always adjust later using Topcoat, which we're going to go over later. So I tend to start with a dark base and then I layer brighter colors over top of that. For painting these weapons, I'm going to start by using a base layer of gunmetal. This is a really cool dark tone. It's got a slight purple tint to it under certain light, and it carries a tiny bit of texture with it as well, which kind of adds to the look for some of these parts. From there, I'll use a slightly lighter metal just for some accents. So from here I'm going to lay down steel. Next, I'm going to choose between either burnt iron or jet exhaust depending on how warm I want my colors to translate onto the final piece. Again, these are darker tones with slight hints of copper. And then finally, I'm going to choose my final details and pick those out using either duraluminum or copper. This is usually reserved for the smaller details on the kit. To demonstrate the masking process, we're going to start with a simple shape. For the knee, we're going to take this little raised detail in the knee and make it a silver metallic color. What I like to do is lay down a few long strips of masking tape along my cutting mat, and just using the lines that are printed on it, cut out a few strips and lay them as close to the border of the part as I can get. If it's an extra small piece or has a lot of concave edges, you can cut your masking tape to be smaller if you need to. From here, I like to make sure the entire border has been covered, and then I'll take larger pieces of tape and make sure that there's no open space if it's got a lot of complicated edges, because I don't want to accidentally overspray my part. You don't have to mask the entire piece if you don't want to, just be careful when you're spraying your next layer. And from here you're ready to spray the part. What I like to do is work one color at a time and finish masking all my pieces before moving on to paint. Once you're ready though, you'll clip your pieces back up and paint them as normal. Once the paint is dried, you can continue masking or remove the tape depending on what you're doing. Another masking tip I want to show you is how to mask circles. For this, I took a spare piece of plastic and drilled a hole in it. I match it as closely as I could to a detail, and then I hold it over the detail and spray using the plastic as a mask. So now that all your paint is done, it's time to talk about top coat. How do you protect all this hard work up to this point? What do I need to do to prepare my model for panel lines and decals? And the answer to that is top coat. My recommendation is to apply a gloss layer of top coat to create a smooth surface to panel line over and apply decals. Before applying your final top coat and protecting everything, top coating is pretty straightforward. It's a lot like priming or base coating. You'll want to lay down a thin layer of top coat and allow that to dry a tiny bit before coming back and laying down a heavier coat to lock everything in. And that's airbrushing. There's plenty more techniques out there, but I don't feel quite qualified to teach them yet. But don't worry, I'll add more to this series as I learn. This was an incredibly fun series to tackle. There's a few shots here of my model that I've done before, panel lining and decals. I wanted to have something that I could use as a reference point for this series, so hopefully you all enjoyed and hopefully you learned a little something along the way. Airbrushing is a pretty simple way to greatly improve the look of your model kits, whether it be simple detailing, simple color swaps, or a full-on custom kit bash color scheme combination. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.